By the Grace of Lady Vader, Chapter 20. Leia glared at her hands, which had been shaking since she had seen Lady Vader's pronouncement. Since she had seen Luke standing there during Lady Vader's pronouncement. Her mother declaring herself Empress had rolled off her back with little trouble. Leia had expected no less after the encounter in the gardens. This is what her parents had planned for years, and they were probably annoyed that it had taken so long to accomplish. But Luke? Luke, she whispered, feeling sick. For him, of all people, to betray her in such a way. But she didn't feel betrayed, not really. Not the way she felt toward Lando. Not even the way she had felt earlier towards C-3PO. Because she knew almost instinctively that Luke wouldn't do that to her. He just wouldn't. No matter what was offered or told to him, he would never simply turn on her for his own gain, and couldn't be reprogrammed as easily as 3PO. Yet there he was, standing behind her and next to him, as if it were the most natural thing he could do, which meant that he must really believe them. He must really think that what he was doing was for the best, for him, for her, for everyone. How could he think that? She shook her head and clasped her shaking hands tightly in her lap. She had no idea how to answer that question, and she didn't even want to answer it. She couldn't possibly understand. A blaster shot impacted the back of the ship, rocking them violently. The sound of something blowing a fuse was heard, and Han swore under his breath. "Chewie, what the hell is going on down there?" Han smacked several buttons on the console, then turned to her urgently, grasping her clenched hands. "Leia, I've got the autopilot set for evasive maneuvers, but I need you to be ready to take over if need be. I've got to check this out. I'll be back up as soon as I can, okay?" She nodded. "Are you sure?" "I'm fine, Han. Go fix whatever needs fixing." He grabbed a sack of tools by the door and ran down to the lower cargo hold. Leia tried to focus on the battle around them. Han's idea of an automatic pilot program was to spin and turn and roll the ship as much as possible. It was dizzying, but did an adequate job of holding off the only ship firing on them. The TIE fighters were also in a better position to give them cover now, for the moment, as the Falcon appeared safe enough. Leia was about to refocus on calming her hands when a clicking and static sounded throughout the cockpit. After a few seconds, the noise cleared. "Leia?" She stared at the comm system in dread, recognizing his voice immediately. "Leia, it's me. I know you can hear me." Her first instinct was to turn it off, to shut the comm system down completely, or to turn the volume off at least. She couldn't have this conversation. She didn't want to talk to him. "I need to talk to you, please." She felt frozen. Her fingers hovered over the audio switch, but wouldn't move. "I know you're angry with me. I know you don't understand why I'm doing this. I want to explain it to you." She heard him sigh heavily. "We need you here, Leia." A short pause followed. "Are you there?" He pressed on. "I don't blame you for running from them. I don't blame you for the way you feel. You have to know that. But, Leia, I know they aren't the family either of us would have wanted or chosen, but I don't want to watch you make the same panicked decision that you'll come to regret later. There isn't time for you to go back and change things. This is it." This had to be a nightmare. This couldn't be real. "Leia." "Luke, you listen to me. Whatever they've told you, whatever they've done, you can't believe them. You can't." Her hand slammed on the console for emphasis. "You were fighting these people weeks ago, and nothing's changed. Don't let them convince you that anything is different now." "Things are different. Everything I've been told was a lie, Leia. Everything." "So?" Leia snapped, not caring that she sounded like a petulant child. "Now you know the truth, and the truth is worse than any story people made up to protect you." "I don't feel worse off knowing that you're my sister." She had no response for that. Leia loved Luke, and under circumstances might have been thrilled to find out that he was family, but she wasn't going to let him use that against her. "Leia, you once told me about your mother. I was a toddler when she left, Luke. She's not that person anymore." "Of course not. That was a lifetime ago. But she still loves you. She's still your mother." Another sigh. "You can say whatever you like now, but I know some part of you felt the loss when you believed she was dead. Are you just over that?" Tears were beginning to prick the corners of her eyes. She angrily squeezed her eyelids shut until the feeling passed. When she opened them again, she answered, "Yes, I'm over it. The same way you're apparently over the time with the rebellion. The same way you've apparently forgotten about all those lovely Jedi ideals you've been following for the past 3 years. Her hands went to her hips in a defiant gesture, which he couldn't see, but made her feel a little bolder. "I also noticed you've been very careful not to mention her father. Don't you have any words of wisdom to give me as far as he's concerned?" Luke didn't answer for a long time. She was beginning to think he might have cut off their communication. At least she managed to make a point with him. Maybe it would get him to think about, "I haven't forgotten or gotten over any of it, but those Jedi ideals were used against me as a smokescreen to keep me from the truth and to get me to do what they wanted. If nothing else, it proves that accepting them blindly wasn't the best thing I could have done. And the rebels will be given clemency. However you want to look at it, we're fighting on the same side. Mother sees that." "Luke, and if you want to discuss Father, I really don't know how I feel about that yet. This hasn't been as easy for me as you'd like to think, but I need to figure it out for myself, and not just see him the way others want me to. Is that really so hard for you to understand? Is that really so unreasonable?" She wanted to shout that it was totally unreasonable, and he was crazy, but the words stuck in her throat. "Leia, what's going on in here? I thought I heard you talking." Han was back in the cockpit and looking at her worriedly. "Leia, please. All I'm asking you to do is..." "Is that Luke?" Han asked. "Luke, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "Leia, we need you." Han snapped the audio receiver off. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing," she whispered. "Leia?" She looked at him miserably. "Leave me alone, Han. I'll be fine." Han pulled her into his arms and held her quietly. Leia clung to him desperately. Piet stood on the battle bridge of the Executor, watching the battle play through the huge viewport. It had been even at first, but Palpatine's fleet was making so many foolish mistakes that Piet had even first been convinced that they were playing a ruse. He'd taken advantage of their mistakes with great caution, expecting an ambush at every turn. Gradually, he had come to the realization that they were simply fighting stupidly. Star Destroyers were engaging other Star Destroyers while sending TIEs out after the Rebel ships and smaller Imperial ships. One battle skiff had detected itself only to chasing the Millennium Falcon, an insane pursuit even without Vader's instructions to protect that ship at all costs. If nothing else, Solo had proven that the Falcon would only be taken at a cost greater than anything a sane man was willing to pay. The only advantage Palpatine's troops had was in numbers, and they were wasting it. It would be gone soon if they kept taking hits. Unfortunately, the rebels were a bit smarter. They seemed to know who had which ships, and that Palpatine's ships were well under control. Their sharp, stinging attacks were all directed at the ships that flew under the banner of the Empress. Piet smiled, despite the battle. The Empress. For the first time, he was unabashedly proud of serving the Empire. "Admiral?" He turned smartly. "Yes, my lord." "Send a squad to take that battle skiff, and to see it to the Millennium Falcon does not leave the system." "My lord, if you are unable to engage a tractor beam on that ship, you must encourage it to either land or come into range of the beam." Piet nodded. "Of course, my lord." "Once you have sent the squad, destroy the remains of the Iron Wheel. It is impeding operations. Then concentrate your fire on the 3 Star Destroyers that are attempting to take out our shields." "And the rebels, my lord?" "Only strike rebel ships if they are presenting an immediate danger. Her Majesty hopes to make an alliance, and she believes it would be impolitic to engage them." "Yes, my lord." "Admiral, the judgment of what constitutes immediate danger is your own." Piet froze. There were 1,000 missteps to be made, and he knew that following that direct order, not to fire, would go against Lord Vader's personal strategies. But to take the implied promise that his judgment would be accepted in questionable cases, that stood a good chance of crossing the Empress. Piet decided that, should the situation arise, he would err on the side of caution. Aboard the Rebel command ship, Mon Mothma was frustrated. The Vader ships were easy to spot. TIEs had been hastily decorated with a spray of red paint, and Star Destroyers had their red tracking lights on. No subtlety here. She was concentrating on Amidala's fleet because Because it was an insult to everything the Alliance stood for. A deserter, not only leaving the rebellion but joining and becoming the Empire. Fire back, she muttered to no one, or at least no one could hear. No fire was returned from the Red Fleet. Palpatine's troops, the Iron Fleet, as most of the gunners were calling them, were firing badly but frequently. Mothma was obliged to send a squad of Y-Wings in their direction. When she had seen Amidala's face, she'd known everything. She could not claim surprise that Luke Skywalker was with them. She opened a comm channel. Riken? Akbar? Orders? Riken asked, not bothering with preliminaries. Take out the support ships. Don't worry about the destroyers until the defenders are gone. Palpatine's ships may seem to be keeping them busy anyway. It won't last long, Akbar warned her. They've got a handle on it. Maybe long enough. Just get rid of the little ships. What about the ones defending the Falcon? General Riken, we can defend our own ships. Are you sure the Falcon's still ours? His question hung in the overcharged air. Captain Solo contacted us himself, she said. We have no reason to believe they have any interest in joining the Vaders. Except that they're being protected by Crimson Guard. Our new Empress may have reasons of her own, Mon Mothma said. Admiral Merrick felt like he was drowning in fire. The Star Destroyer had taken hits. Oh, hits and hits again. But it wasn't fatally damaged. Yet. It just stunk of fried wires and melted plastic. And bodies. There were bodies strewn around, and the smell of blood on metal was overpowering. The climate controls were gone, and as the Star Destroyer moved to the solar side of Bespin, the temperature was rising, creating an oven on the bridge. The helmsman was swaying dangerously. Lieutenant, Merrick yelled, set course for the Nightline. Get us away from the sun. Yes, sir. The helmsman leaned forward and made adjustments. The destroyer began to veer around the planet in a slow and lazy arc. Get the droids on climate control, now! No response. The helmsman had fainted at his station. Merrick staggered across the bridge, trying not to step on anyone's limbs, and made his way into the corridor outside. It was full of smoke and small fires, but passable and free of bodies. It was better out here. The ship was on autopilot. Someone needed to get it back into fighting shape, and the droid's central comm system was malfunctioning. He'd made it halfway to the control room when the destroyer came around the Nightline and re-entered the wild battle. No one on the bridge was there to see it, no one to note where the auto-response guns were firing. So it was really no one's decision for the destroyer to fire on the Falcon. The Falcon escaped unscathed, diving deep under the crossfire, but her Crimson Guard saw the attack and swarmed in on the hobbling Star Destroyer. Merrick wasn't aware of the hull breach until the corridor decompressed around him. Lando had no idea what frequencies the rebels used, and he sure as hell didn't want to advertise himself to either empire, so he sent out a call on a private channel as soon as he found a working transmitter. It wouldn't carry much or be stable for long, but he and Han had used it for quick communication on scams in the past. Here's hoping he's paying attention, 'cause I've got one shot here. Static. Static. Then the welcome growl of a Wookiee, saying that they were a little busy for games just now. I know, Lando said. Get it to the rebellion. We've got safe havens in the east sector. We're holding them for now. Damaged ships can land. Repeat, just do it carefully. He fed the coordinates of the secured platforms into the machine. The ironic thing, Lando thought, was that he was serious. But they'd have to be damn fools to trust him. Damn fools or desperate. He had a feeling the east sector would be seeing some traffic soon.